You don't need a school history lesson from me. You were there at the time. If you grew up in 1980s Britain, this is the stuff that just stuck. So let's get straight into it. Here are 51 memories that will get those nostalgia juices flowing. We had He-Man with his powers of Grayskull delivering life lessons at full volume through a television that weighed nearly as much as you did. Adverts were actually funny, especially the PG Tips chimps, who had personalities, storylines, and catchphrases that followed you straight into the playground. Getting busy with the fizzy after school with the soda stream was the best way to quench your thirst. Fizzy pop tasted much better when you made it yourself, even if it didn't. Talking cars felt like the future. Knight Rider made it seem completely reasonable that your dashboard should answer back. Scott and Charlene getting married on Neighbours wasn't just a storyline, it was an event. People who didn't watch Neighbours somehow tuned in, and I bet you know the words of Angry Anderson suddenly, even now. At some point, a VHS recorder entered the home and your dad never got the clock to work. Music lived on cassette tapes, and cassette tapes lived in Walkmans, and to save batteries, you'd rewind the tape using a pencil. When your parents needed information, they didn't search for it, they waited. CFAX pages flicking over slowly with garish text and graphics. Blue Peter made everything look achievable. Cardboard, sticky back plastic, and here's one I made earlier, result that never quite matched what you ended up with. Long after Thatcher Milk Snatcher, some schools still handed out the milk in the mornings, only now our parents paid for it. Telephone boxes were a thing. Rural areas might still even rely on them. For the rest of us, they were for private calls when you didn't want your folks to listen in. Explosions followed, plans always came together, nobody ever seemed to get hurt. The A-Team making chaos feel oddly reassuring. It also had one of the catchiest theme tunes in television history. Danger Mouse handled danger with confidence, a cape and a sidekick who worried enough for everyone. Del Boy was always on the make, always convinced the next deal would change everything. Then there was that keyboard, rubbery, unforgiving, the ZX Spectrum, demanded patience and commitment, but was more than worth the effort. It beat having a BBC Micro that only the nerds in your class seemed to own. And games didn't just appear, they arrived slowly, creeping onto your screen as you sat perfectly still, just in case, while the loading sound ripped your eardrums to pieces. Care Bears were not only on TV, but they also dominated bedrooms with their bright colors and stitched smiles plastered all over duvets and pillowcases. Outside, the milkman was still doing his rounds, glass bottles clinking onto doorsteps, foil tops already under attack from birds who clearly understood the system better than we did. Saturday Superstore took over Saturday mornings, broadcasting live from shopping centers, crowds waving in the background, kids phoning in from home, games and pop stars. What more could you want? Songs were recorded straight off the radio, finger hovering over the button, blaming the DJ every time they talked too soon. Grange Hill wasn't silly or safe. It felt serious, sometimes uncomfortable, and everyone watched Zammo on his downward spiral as if it were real life. Ice cream vans drifted down your street, the tune never quite right, but close enough to send everyone running out of the front door. Rooms were brown, beige, sometimes orange, and nobody questioned it. Ghostbusters arrived and suddenly everyone knew the theme tune, and playgrounds filled with imaginary proton packs. Someone always stood next to the television, adjusting the aerial, while everyone else shouted instructions that didn't help. Woolworth's pick and mix wasn't casual, it was tactical. Every choice mattered, even though you were only spending pennies. The pressure to get it right was intense. Live Aid was on everywhere, all day music pouring out of the screen while the world briefly felt very connected. In the late 80s, Thundercats was a staple of the CBBC afternoon slot, just enough time to get home from school to watch it. Meanwhile, on CITV, you had Inspector Gadget, who never quite got it right, but somehow always got there in the end. The Seoul Olympics shocked the world with Ben Johnson's disqualification for doping in the 100-meter final. Even as kids, we knew that this was something huge. Seeing E.T. the extraterrestrial for the first time felt different. Him desperate to phone home, his friendship with Elliot, and you pretending you didn't cry while knowing full well you did. Press Gang made you feel clever just for keeping up. Tea Time TV gathered families together, whether they planned it or not. Everyone was watching the same thing. There was Dallas, and the question, who shot JR, somehow becoming playground discussion, adult conversation, and headline news all at once. We didn't have Blockbuster, so Friday night meant a trip to Ritz Video with its walls lined with chunky plastic cases, horror covers you weren't allowed to look at for too long, and the quiet pressure of making the right choice. The Christmas Radio Times double issue was an event, pages carefully studied, circles drawn around the lineup as you planned your festive TV with giddy excitement. At school, we could use Bunsen burners unattended. When the VHS image went snowy, a mysterious tape was used that promised miracles and rarely delivered. The Raccoons theme tune stayed with you far longer than expected, and we all still remember the villain Cyril Sneer. Rainbow existed with George, Zippy, and Bungle doing their thing to the delight of younger audiences. And Roland Rat was everywhere, and to this day, we don't know why. Thursday nights meant top of the pops, and the charts mattered more than they probably should have. While Spitting Image felt a bit much, but you watched anyway. We all remember the great storm of '87 and how badly Michael Fish got it wrong. And eventually, if it wasn't raining, you were sent outside because you'd watched enough television. Because as kids in the 1980s, we did a lot of that, play outside, and we were definitely better off for it. What memories do you have of TV and childhood growing up in Britain in the 1980s? Leave a comment below, and I could include it in another roundup video. Until then, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next trip down memory lane.